Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we are talking about eyeshadow palettes. I did a video like this at the beginning of the year sharing 10 older eyeshadow palettes on my wish list, and there are eyeshadow palettes coming out every single day, but I'm still thinking about buying a couple of these older releases. They might not be super old, but they're obviously not like the newest product on the market. So I wanted to share them with you guys, and if you guys have tried them or you have any thoughts on them, let me know because I would love to know if you think they are worth the money or worth checking out. So let's jump into it, and I'm actually going to talk about a palette that somehow I completely missed. This has been out for a few months and I don't even remember seeing photos of it, but it is the Dose of Colors Cutting Edge Eyeshadow Palette. This palette is so gorgeous. I've tried a few Dose of Colors products. I've tried their 5-pan matte eyeshadow palettes, and then I also have the Friendcation palette, which is one of my favorites of all time. But how pretty are the colors in this palette? It looks like it comes with 2 shimmers and 3 mattes, and lately I've been all about mini eyeshadow palettes. There's something about a really small curated palette that just makes me really happy. Usually 9 pans are like my perfect size, but I still like 5-pan eyeshadow palettes as well. And I like the fact that this has some greens, but it also has a really pretty mid-tone warm brown, and then that gold looks stunning as well. So I just think you'd be able to create so many pretty looks using this one. And like I said, I've tried Dose of Colors shadows in the past. I've really enjoyed them. So I'm thinking about adding this one to my collection at some point in 2021. One brand that I definitely want to try in 2021 is Colored Rain. I've heard amazing things about their eyeshadow formula. I thought about buying the Juicy Boost palette back when it was first released, but I wasn't sure if I would use every single shade in the palette. So there is an older palette on my wish list that I'll probably end up buying. This one is the Queen of Hearts palette. It retails for $42 and it comes with 12 really beautiful shadows. So I've heard that their formula is really intense and vibrant. Colored Rain is a Black-owned beauty brand, and they make some really gorgeous products, especially their eyeshadow palettes. So this is probably the #1 palette on my list. I just think the shimmers look really nice, and the matte shadows are pretty. These are definitely shades that I would get a lot of use out of. There are 2 older Colourpop palettes that are kind of on my wish list. I've gone back and forth on these. I just have so many Colourpop eyeshadow palettes that whenever they release a new one, I always feel like I could probably duplicate it with other Colourpop palettes in my collection, but Colourpop does make one of my favorite formulas because the mattes are really easy to work with and the metallics are just really intense and vibrant. Today I'm wearing the Colourpop Baroque palette with also a shadow from the Colourpop That's Taupe palette all over my lid. The first older Colourpop palette that I'm still thinking about buying is the Good as Gold palette, and when they initially released this, I wasn't as drawn to it just because I was super into colorful eyeshadow at the time, and I still like colorful eyeshadow, but more and more I've been reaching for like golds and bronzy tones, not like super toned down neutrals, but something that leans a little bit more neutral rather than something a little bit more colorful. I don't know if it's just like the holiday season, but I'm so into gold eyeshadow right now. So this is one that really appeals to me. I mean, the swatches look amazing, especially the gold swatches. Those just look so, so pretty. So I think this was their holiday palette for 2019. If you guys tried this, you'll have to let me know if you think it's worth picking up. I do have other gold eyeshadows in my collection, but those just look so intense and vibrant. The other Colourpop palette that is on my wish list probably isn't as high as the last one, but I do still think about buying the Flutterbye palette just because, again, in 2020, I've kind of been into cooler tones more than I used to be. So when this was first announced, I felt like it was pretty, but I wasn't wearing cool tones as much. And now I love a good cool toned palette, and this has a lot of pretty colors in it, especially like those rosy, pinky purple shadows. So I do think about picking it up. I wonder how similar it is to the Making Mauves palette because I do own that one. That one is a really nice 9-pan, and if they are super similar, I feel like I could skip over this one. So if you guys have both of them, let me know. But honestly, if it came down to it and I did purchase one of these, either the Flutterbye or the gold one, I'd probably go with the gold one, but Flutterbye is pretty as well. So there are 2 older Natasha Denona palettes on my wish list right now, and this is one that I actually skipped over, but after I talked about it, maybe in a purchase or pass or an anti-haul video, a lot of people left comments, like tons of people left comments saying this was one of their favorite purchases, so I kind of added it back to my wish list. It is the Natasha Denona Mini Retro Eyeshadow Palette. The reason why I skipped over this is because when I saw the initial photos, I felt like I could duplicate that with other shadows in my collection, and I still feel that way about a couple of shadows, maybe the pink tones, but a lot of you guys said like the gray tones, and I mean, some people even describe them as green. They're like grays with a hint of green, are so unique and interesting and really pretty on the eyes. And I don't know, like whenever I scroll through Sephora's website, this is one that I always think about buying. It's $25. I could buy it right now, but you know, I really try to keep my palette purchases a little bit more minimal because I have a tendency to go crazy with eyeshadow palettes. If you guys are new to my channel, for the past 2 years, I've only purchased one palette per month, which is still a lot of eyeshadow, don't get me wrong, but it is a big improvement from what I did 2 or 3 years ago when I had like 75 new palettes. So that's the reason why I don't just go out and purchase every palette on my wish list, just because it does get out of hand very quickly. So this is one that is on my older wish list that I might end up trying just because it's small, it's curated, I love the colors, and a lot of you guys have said the quality is really good. The other Natasha Denona palette on my wish list is one that I actually mentioned in my last video, but it's still on there. I still think about buying this. It is the Biba palette. This one retails for $129, and I feel like it's kind of moved down on my wish list since Natasha Denona released Bronze and Glam this year, because those are a little bit more neutral overall, but I think I like the colors in Bronze and Glam more than this one. What's interesting is you could purchase both the Bronze palette and the Glam palette and spend the exact same amount of money that you would spend on the Biba palette, and I feel like even though the colors are a little bit different, you could probably create very, very similar looks if you have those two. And I do have those two. So I don't think I necessarily need this one. It's just whenever I see it in a YouTube video, I always feel like people are raving about it. They say how much they love it, and I still want it. I want her to release a smaller version of this at a less expensive price point, and I would be all over it. I just know that I don't need a full-sized $129 palette when I have shades like these in my collection. I love the palettes that Juvia's Place releases, and this year they released a lot of pretty palettes, and there's one that I initially skipped over that I still think about. It is the Wahala palette. This one retails for $36. They also released Wahala 2, which is a little bit more blue toned, which I think is really, really pretty, but if I was going to purchase one, I'd go with Wahala just because it has a little bit more variation within the shades. I love the fact that this is kind of like a rainbow palette, but it has a lot of purples, some blues. It's not full of a lot of super intense warm shadows like reds and oranges and yellows, because those are probably the colorful shadows that I wear the least. I definitely tend to reach for like greens and blues and purples more. So the colors in here are pretty. The textures look really nice. The only reason I haven't purchased this one yet is because it does have some pressed glitters in it, and I just don't really wear pressed glitter eyeshadow. I know a lot of brands have been doing pressed glitters in their palettes, and I feel like other brands have kind of moved away from them. I think this one has maybe like 3 pressed glitters in it, and I know that I won't get use out of them, so I hate to buy a palette where I know I won't use specific shades in it. So that's the only reason I haven't purchased it, but otherwise I think it is amazing. I still think about it because the color story is so pretty. Okay, I don't know how to pronounce this brand. I feel like people pronounce it Cleona, but this is a brand that I am definitely trying in 2021. They are an indie brand. They create the most gorgeous shimmer shadows. I really like interesting shadows, duochromes. I know they have multi-chromes. The only thing is every time I go on the website, like the majority of the shadows are sold out because they're so high in demand. I definitely want to try more indie brands in 2021. I hear so many good things about a lot of them. So if you guys have any recommendations, please let me know. They don't necessarily make eyeshadow palettes, but they do have bundles on their website. They have single shadows. I think they're actually doing a collab with Temptalia in 2021. So I'll definitely have to check out that collab and try it out if I can get my hands on it. But if you guys have any recommendations for this brand, please let me know. But like, look at those swatches. Those are so pretty. I mean, you just don't really see that from mainstream brand. So that is a brand that I definitely plan on trying. And if you guys have any recommendations, let me know so I can kind of build my wish list. And then whenever they do a really big restock, I'll have to grab some. BH Cosmetics makes gorgeous eyeshadow palettes. I think they're very underrated. The quality is so good and their color stories are really nice. I actually didn't get around to trying any of their colorful palette releases. I think it was technically called like their Sweet Shop collection, because I do have a lot of the colorful Colourpop monochromatic palettes. And for me, I felt like I didn't necessarily need to repeat any of those palettes. For example, I have the Colourpop red palette, so I didn't feel like I needed to add the BH Cosmetics red palette to my collection. It would just be a lot of colorful shadow that I wouldn't necessarily reach for on an everyday basis. So I haven't tried these. These are $18, but I still think about trying some of them. There is one that kind of has like pinks and blues, so it's not a completely monochromatic palette. And if I do end up trying one, that will probably be the one. I just heard really good things about these palettes, especially if you are into colorful eyeshadow, but you don't necessarily want to spend a ton of money. One of these might be a great option for you. So next time I'm in the market for like a colorful palette, I might end up going with one of those. Another colorful palette that I still consider from time to time that was actually on my wish list as soon as they announced it is the Violet Voss Flamingo Pro Eyeshadow Palette. So it's $45, and I think they came out with this either last year or the year before, but it was like the end of the summer. So we were kind of heading into winter, and I just felt like it was a very summery eyeshadow palette for what I typically wear. You can totally wear these colors during the winter. I just tend to switch up my eyeshadow seasonally. So I knew I wouldn't get a ton of use out of it heading into the winter season. So that's why I initially skipped over it. But I just feel like it would be such a fun palette to have because there are so many pretty colors in here. I've tried Violet Voss in the past, and their formula is just so intense and rich and pretty easy to work with. So this is one that I think about trying as well. If I'm ever looking for like a multicolored palette, I might pick this one up. The last one on my list is one that I actually mentioned last year as well, but I still think about trying this one. This one is the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. So I know at this point this one is a little bit older and she's released a lot of other pretty palettes, but the colors in this palette are just so gorgeous. This one is $67. And I don't know, every time I scroll past this one on Sephora's website, I think about buying it just because I think it would be so much fun to add to my collection. I love the fact that there are so many pretty pastels, and then there are a couple of neutrals mixed in as well. I just think it's like the perfect colorful palette because it's not over the top. You still get to incorporate color, but you can also do something a little bit more toned down, and I just love it. So that one and the Biba were palettes that I mentioned last year that are still on my list. A lot of the other ones have kind of fallen off. I did end up purchasing maybe one or two from my list last year, but those two have made it another entire year. So I feel like maybe it's a sign I should try them, but we'll see. Heading into 2021, I'm not sure exactly how many palettes I'll be buying. I did mention in a previous video, I don't think I'll be doing the one palette per month next year. And it's not just with palettes. I think I'm just going to kind of take off any purchasing parameters that I had put into place because it does kind of limit what I can buy and review on my channel. If I didn't film YouTube videos, I would totally be okay purchasing even less than one palette per month. But because I do like to review products and compare them, sometimes I feel very restrained by rules that I put into place when it comes to purchasing makeup. So I'm not sure what I'll do next year, but I do know I'll still kind of keep it a little bit more low-key and not buy a ton of palettes. So we'll see. I'll let you guys know. But if there's anything you want me to review on my channel that you've had your eye on, let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I would love to know if there are any older palettes on your wish list, anything that you're thinking about trying. I hope you guys have a great day. If you want to watch more palette related videos, I'll link my playlist in the description box below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys very soon with a new video. Bye.